Oh, let's go back to... Hello, everybody. We're back. It's Monday night, and I'm actually got it together. So apologies for last week. It just got so hot that I couldn't function up here because I work in the loft, and it was like a sauna, or worse, sauna that had broken and gone mentally hot, really, really hot. Um, what I thought I'd talk about tonight and see if I could keep everyone's interest before if not, we move on to something else, um, is the legal aid agency. And I thought it was a good time to have a chat about legal aid because I think it's now a month the the agency's computer system, CCMS, has been out of action following a cyber attack. Well, I think cyber attack's a bit of a grand word. I get when I hear cyber attack, I sort of think of spacecraft coming in with um, lasers and things, but actually it just means somebody's hacked into their system and been taking people's personal data. Because the legal aid agency holds lots of bank statements and things as evidence of people's. I'm amazed they never thought of this before. Oh, actually, they did. There was a warning. I'll come back to this. The legal aid agency themselves gave a warning. So what I'll do before I start, sorry, I'll just say, does anybody, hello to Mike, Harris and Shannon, welcome to the show. Do interrupt me if there's anything occurs to you or you just get sick of the sound of my voice. But what I'll do in the meantime is I'll rattle through the material I've got here. So if I just change screens and I go back to the top of here. These are the show notes for the tonight's episode, which you can get on my blog, which you can see here. So if you just type William Flack blog, you can get these notes to look at later. So what I'll do is I'll just assume that people don't know a lot about the legal aid agency, and so I'll just say a couple of introductory things. So the legal aid agency, and this is from the AI summary that you get if you do a Google search for legal aid. It's the government body in England and Wales responsible for commissioning and administering legal services. I don't think that's actually not correct. It's funding. It's the responsible for funding the provision of certain legal services. It ensures that individuals who qualify for legal aid have access to legal advice, assistance, and representation in both civil and criminal matters. And that's not entirely true either, because there are large swathes of civil matters such as personal injury, welfare benefits, immigration, which are largely excluded from this. So they won't be able to ensure that anybody gets access to that. The government took all those things out of scope of legal aid back in 2010. And then it says the legal aid agency aims to provide fair, prompt, and effective access to justice, particularly for vulnerable individuals, whilst also ensuring value for money for taxpayers. Well, I mean, again, that's not entirely correct. They're not particularly good at dealing with vulnerable individuals because you really do need a solicitor who to access legal aid for you. If you're a vulnerable individual and you approach the legal aid agency, you won't get a lot of joy, I don't think. You might be able to get through to somebody on the phone, but really all they would probably do is signpost you somewhere else. Now, the crazy thing is that although the legal aid agency's job is to ensure that people who are eligible get funding or get legal services, we've got these advice deserts here, which I expect you've all seen these maps. And the red area is, I'm afraid that is a bit small, but I think what's the word? The conditions here on the map are the same for both. So if there's 0 providers in your area, it's red. So you can see most of it has got 0 providers. This one is for community care lawyers. This one is for housing lawyers, but it's not a lot of difference. And I think the idea here is that if you look at that, if you live in Norfolk, you really aren't going to find it easy to find a solicitor, according to this. I'll come back to it because it's a little bit curious. It's a bit strange this because they do appear to be providers, and so it's not quite as bad as it looks. Um, Now, when I first qualified in 1991, legal aid was still administered or had just finished being administered by the Law Society, which is the professional body that governs solicitors. So we were allowed to sort of dish out the money to ourselves, which the government didn't like. So then introduced the Legal Aid Board, which stayed in power until Tony Blair got in. And then they took on this rather more grand title of Legal Services Commission. And I think that's when this business about commissioning and administering legal aid services came in, because back then they were going to do more to sort of come up with pilots for getting access to justice. But that turned out to be a failure. Uh, and the legal aid agents, or the Legal Services Commission back in the late 90s and early noughties, set up these things. Anyone ever heard of clacks and clans? Because that was when they thought they would cut out, because the relations between the legal aid agency or the Legal Services Commission and the legal profession had by that time reached quite a low. So the Legal Services Commission thought, oh, I know what we'll do. We'll set up our own legal organisations and we'll call them CLACs, which was something like Community Legal Advice Centre. And I've forgotten what clan was. It was something else, but with an N. So they set these things up, and I think there was two or three set up, and they all folded within a couple of years, um, because the legal aid agency didn't know how to run these organisations. They'd never done it, and it failed. So here's some links that you might find interesting. There's the legal aid agency's own website, and this will now tell you that the main bit of news at the moment is that they are down because of this data breach. And I'm told they may be down for 6 months. But apparently Marks and Spencers, I didn't know about this, had been hit by a cyber attack as well. And it took them 6 months to get back up and running, apparently. So if a private business takes that long, then God help us with a sort of public sector organisation like Legal Aid Agency. But I can't quite see why it takes so long, because I thought all they've got to do is just change the login details and but I don't know. I don't know enough about computers to be confident about that. So if anybody wanted to see a picture of the chief executive of the Legal Aid Agency, it's Jane Harbottle. And here's some stuff about her, which is quite good to see, because do you remember one of the problems with the post office? It all seems a long time ago now, doesn't it? The post office scandal. Um, but one of the problems I think we had there with that woman who was the boss was that you had that sort of thing called the sort of the quangocracy of sort of people who wear expensive suits and think they're very clever, who can go from any job in any profession and be a CEO without knowing anything about the subject matter of what they're dealing with. For instance, running post offices. But hang on, Jane Harbottle, on the other hand, to her credit, has worked her way up through the legal aid agency, and she's been there for 25 years, starting off as a contract manager, which is the people that engage with providers and the legal aid agency, and they act as a sort of liaison. So to her credit, she obviously knows what she's doing, rather than just being parachuted in to take a huge salary and then clear off before the public inquiry into whatever went wrong under her. So good on her. And then this is good. I thought I was bad at blogging, but the legal aid agency, um, they set up a blog, and they did a few posts. But there was one in September 2022, and then another one in January 2023. But look at this. They've got it's a post about beware of cyber criminals who are preying on legal aid providers. But I think they forgot that they might also be preying on the legal aid agency themselves. So Unfortunately, they didn't see the writing on the wall there and follow their own advice. And that appears to have been the last post. So I feel quite good about the frequency with which I write posts on mine now. Um, is this still interesting, or am I losing you? Um, you can say no, but it doesn't go on that much longer. Um, Now, one of the problems you got with, and this is a sort of maybe a bit more interesting because it's political, is the legal aid agency's got a really tricky role because they have to work with solicitors, which is not a pleasant thing for anybody because solicitors tend to be very pushy people who think that if they shout loud enough and prove how much they know everything, they'll get their own way. And especially when they're dealing, you've heard me, I've been a bit disparaging about the public sector and the legal aid agency. So multiply that by 3 or 4, and you get people ringing up and shouting at staff, and well, you don't know anything. Listen to me. So they don't like talking. It's very difficult to talk to anybody at the legal aid agency if you're a solicitor, other than dedicated telephone answering people. And there's a hostility which meant that a lot of the things the legal aid agency did seemed to be designed to make life more difficult for solicitors. Um, for instance, when they brought in, and there was a time when you had to actually give the legal aid original bank statements as proof of income for people. Photocopies weren't good enough; they had to be originals, which was a real nuisance because it meant people had to come to the office not just with and get original bank statements, which probably meant they had to go to their bank. So things like that were really causing difficulties. And solicitors have been, the reason why you've got these red areas is because solicitors have been dropping out of doing legal aid work at about the same sort of rate as pubs have been closing down. So if you drive past what used to be a pub in your area and see it's all boarded up, you'd probably see the same thing if you look at a list of solicitors from 10 or 15 years ago. Most of them have gone now. So that, for instance, in Liverpool, there's apparently only one legal aid provider left, private firm doing it anyway. Um, so then along came coronavirus, and oh yes, of course, before coronavirus, the legal aid agency wouldn't accept digital signatures. You had to get, what's called a wet signature. Somebody had to sign something in front of the solicitor, so somebody had to travel all the way to the office, bring their children if they're looking after them, and then just to sign a form, which they could have signed on their mobile phone. So coronavirus came along, and those things changed because people couldn't be expected to travel to offices because they were shut down. So they then allowed us to give in photocopies and scanned versions of bank statements, digital signatures, and they relaxed a lot of the rules about solicitors having to work in the office and give what's called face-to-face advice, where you could do it digitally. So that made life a lot easier, but there were still lots of difficult things, which I'm hoping that when legal aid recovers and they're back up and running and they have to rethink what they're going to do, they'll think, well, hang on, there were so many stupid things we were doing before. Maybe we can just get around doing them. So, for instance, when somebody gets a legal aid certificate, they have an initial costs limit. They say, for instance, you want to defend a claim for possession, you would get the certificate has a scope of work which should be to defend the claim, and then it would give you up to a certain point, like exchange of witness statements. It wouldn't cover you for the whole trial because the idea is that it could be not a very strong case, so they'll give it you up to a certain bit, and then you have to write to them and ask them to extend it, which is a pure formality because you just say, I think this is a strong case. And they usually say, okay, here's an extension. And they also limit your cost limit. You can only do work up to £2,500. And that's been the same for about 20 years now. And so I think what they might suddenly say is, well, hang on, why are we limiting these things so much? Let's just give them more of a carte blanche at the beginning. But then I was doing some research this week and I came across, and I should have done this more, which shows a really exciting way in which legal aid might work. And it's actually been in place for 2 years now. It's called Housing Loss Prevention Advice Service, or HLPAS, which is confusing because there's an exciting body called the Housing Law Practitioners Association, which is really good way of learning the law if you're doing if you're doing housing law as a young solicitor like I was. But for anybody else, it's pretty dull. But they're called HLPA with no S, but this is HLPAS. Uh, and what HLPAS means is that if you get a letter or a notice from your landlord saying they're thinking of evicting you. Let me see. It says, yes, anyone who has evidence of risk of possession proceedings, loss of their home, or illegal eviction may be given early legal advice in the areas of housing, debt, and welfare benefits, which has been off the table for a long time, as set out in section 2.1 of the guidance. So I suppose that would cover the sort of things we talk about on here, like notice of seeking possession, a letter saying your rent arrears have gone up, so we're going to evict you. But the incredible thing about that is it's not means assessed, so anybody can get that help, which is really exciting. And it cuts out a lot. I mean, obviously, it means that legal representation is available, or assistance is available for much, much more people. But it's also much less hassle for solicitors because we're not spending all our time figuring out whether somebody is eligible, whether they've got less than £733 a month disposable income and all that sort of stuff. So this is really good. And if people want to know more about this, I put links here. So you've got the provider guidance. This sets out details of what the scheme is, which it's odd though that they haven't really published. I'll come back to this, but they haven't publicized it to the public very much. This is more publicity for service providers. And then you've got a list here, which is of all the people that provide service in the different areas. So you can look up. I think the area is based around county courts. So I don't know if Mike up in Bedford, Shannon, you're aware of Rahman and Co. Solicitors, but they're the
I dealt
local.
with them once. They're based in London, right?
I guess so, because a lot of these places aren't based. The firms aren't based in the immediate area, which again reflects the fact that the legal aid agency, they used to say, "Oh no, you've got to be local. You can't go out of your parish, as it were." But now it's open to. I think if people sort of spot that, I don't know, the other areas. I noticed that Crewe is covered by a firm in. There they are. Crewe is covered by One Law Solicitors, and when I looked them up there in Burton, no, sorry, Stoke was it? I don't know. Forgive me, my geography's terrible. But they were an hour and a half drive from Stoke Crewe railway station. So
Well, can
this
I just
is
ask a
quite.
question
Yeah,
about
yeah.
this?
No, please do, please
So
do.
I'm just thinking, and I don't know if it's something which has been done elsewhere already, or because in one sense you've got charities which are like struggling for money. Certainly at the moment they are.
Mm.
If a charity was to basically take on like a solicitor, um,
Yeah.
and basically solicitor went and did solicitor work, but the charity workers kind of did the kind of running around and kind of getting bits and pieces. Is that a viable way of working, or is it too complicated to kind of get correct registration for the solicitor and stuff to
So,
work like that?
if a charity was to get a solicitor, and
Yeah,
then
and like employ a solicitor and
mm,
doing solicitor stuff, but getting paid by legal aid, or kind of getting paid by through the system.
well, it would be. I don't think it would be possible for a charity unless they sort of could jump through certain hurdles and become a sort of legal services provider. Because all of these organisations here are either law centres or private firms. So you couldn't have, say, I mean, Shelter, ironically, don't appear on any of this list anymore. But oh no, they do. There they are. they're still, yeah, they're still going strong in Norwich. And when I went to Norwich County Court, I did actually see their office, but there was on a Shelter Cymru seemed to be there as well. But Shelter is a slight exception because they're a housing related charity, and they did sort of create a sort of legal service provider wing about 20 years ago, which I think they've been busy dismantling most places now because I think they felt more comfortable with campaigning. So the danger you've got for a charity is that you could probably, if you got a, if you jump through all the hurdles, you might have your solicitor sitting there doing this stuff. But the danger is somebody's got to manage them. And so you need to have another lawyer there to know whether the solicitor is creating, sort of sorcerer's apprentice type situation there, which is quite easy to do. Um, which I'd be really interested to know. Sorry, does that answer your question, Mike? Uh, so, I mean, ideally, yes, that's what would happen. But the problem is the solicitors aren't supervised. The charity's got to pay them, and one of the things that housing lawyers are really bad at is billing their work. So you'd be paying the solicitor a couple of, whatever you pay every month, and they may not be bringing any money in. So then you're worried about that. But then when you say, why aren't they bringing any money in? Nobody knows because nobody's knows how to do what they're doing. So it can be a route to considerable distress. So I suspect, though, that a lot of these organisations here, are struggling to meet the enormous demand um, for the work that is out there. Because I spoke to a provider which is on this list. I won't say who they are. Um, this last week, which has got me interested in this, and they said we are getting something like 60 cases a week or something because they get referred by the local court. So the court will say, we've got this many possession proceedings coming in. Um, I mean, the clients could come to you directly, but the courts actually refer people out. I mean, it's a really good idea. But the problem is that everybody's been busy dropping out of legal aid. And so suddenly there's a huge demand, and it's not a bad. I mean, you get paid £157 per case, fixed fee, and then if you do three times that amount of work, you get paid by the hour. So it's a bit of a drag because if you only do twice the fixed fee, so you do say £400 worth, you're going to lose whatever it is, £200 on the case. But if you did more, you get paid an hourly rate. And I find most of my work now is three times the limit on legal help stuff. But I don't do this. But I'd be really interested to hear from anybody that's involved in this service as to whether they are meeting the demand and they're comfortable with it. I suspect they're not, partly because we're still getting, say, Morrison Spallett in Catford and Virgo are getting approached by people who have never heard of this scheme, and they've had the usual thing of going around the list of solicitors, which I produce, and getting told, sorry, we haven't got capacity. So hopefully one of the things that might, and see, one of the things you'd think that if the legal aid agency was committed to providing making sure that people got legal representation, they would be doing things like giving loans to solicitors to invest and training them. But they don't. What they do is they actually audit you and send. I used to be a legal aid peer reviewer. I used to go and audit people and basically try and catch them out making mistakes. And if they made too many, they'd get their contract taken away. But they wouldn't do things like, I mean, they do some sort of basic training on how to use their own computer system, but they don't do things like how do you do billing, or how do you manage a junior person, or how do you deal with clients who are mentally ill or something like that, which is a very, very common problem in this area of work. You've got to figure out what to do if somebody doesn't understand what's going on in their case. and also, I mean, most people will tell you that. I mean, no disrespect to anybody out there, but housing clients tend to be the most difficult to deal with out of any category of law. Um, Family clients are a bit stressed, you know, they're going through hell and they're fighting with their ex and stuff, but for some reason, housing is worse. And even criminal, I mean, they all think that criminals are, you know, they're baddies a lot of the time, but they're quite charming about it as well. And they often know the game as well as the solicitors. But housing, the receptionist will probably tell you that the housing ones are difficult. But so there should be training on all this, but there isn't. And that's partly, again, a political thing because if you think about it, the government don't want to be seen to be being nice to people with legal problems. And the most obvious example of that is criminals. I mean, eh, or alleged criminals, I should say, defendants. You can't quite imagine one of these toughy Home Secretaries that sort of plays to the cheap seats at conference saying, I'm proud to say that this year we've managed to help 80% of the people that come across us to get acquitted from the crimes that police have charged them with. I mean, it just doesn't sound too good, does it? And the same thing, a lot of people think, oh, you know, and the government's bad at this as well, encouraging people to think that there are these sort of feckless people that just need to be punished a bit and then they'll get a job. It's the same state of mind that says we don't want to throw money at helping these people who can't be bothered to pay their rent. And the legal aid agency should be challenging that and saying, well, actually, research shows that there's a lot of people with mental health problems that are genuinely struggling. But that's probably something that'll maybe come along in a couple of generations. But we can hope. So that is a bit about housing loss prevention advice service, which I'm going to be finding out more about and telling you more about because it really is fantastic if people. I mean, I'm going to send that list out to people. Although most of the inquiries, I guess, are only in certain areas. I've got my list of solicitors on the website or on the blog there that which I can actually show you now if anybody hasn't seen it before. If we go to my resources and then actually, I think I might have fallen off here. Places to get. I thought I had it on here. I'm really sorry. I realised it's not on here. But if I go to list of solicitors, I can send this out. Yeah, here we go. I don't know how this got taken off, but I'll put it. I'll fix it. So then, hang on. So I've got this list that I send to people, and it's not going up on the screen. Can you see that? Let's put that in the middle. So that's my list of solicitors that in the Greater London area. In fact, there's a couple outside. In fact, Turpin Miller, I think they're on the other list for doing the scheme for Oxford. But I tend to find that I send this list to people, say, sorry, I'm too busy to take your case on. And then they'll come back and say, I went through the whole list and nobody could take the case on. Um, so hopefully that list, there might be people out there that are sort of taking on cases through that scheme. And also, if you can get there, a lot of people probably out there are not bothering to try and get legal aid because they're thinking, I'm working, so I'm not going to be eligible. Remember, this is only for possession. If you've lost your home already and you weren't helped by a homelessness application, that's not going to work unless I suppose you could say that if you're at risk of losing your temporary accommodation, that might fit. But I'll check because I suspect that where it says they've got guidance in section 2.1, which I won't bore you with now, but I expect there's quite a lot of thought gone into how they can stop solicitors inventing ways of bringing things within that. Uh, but I would have thought loss of their home could include temporary wouldn't you think? If you got temporary accommodation and somebody says you're not in priority need, you've got to leave your home in 2 weeks. But maybe it's expressly excluded in the list. So that I've got a little link to what is a cyber attack, but I won't go into that. So that's my little talk on the legal aid agency, and I hope that they will. I found over the last 10 or 15 years, the legal aid agency has mellowed a bit in dealing with solicitors, and they're not quite so hostile towards us. Um, but maybe it's an illusion. I don't know. But I don't. But I hate. I have to say this. I do not blame them at all for because I think solicitors have created a very bad relationship with the legal aid agency, not just through ripping them off, which I think lots of solicitors will say, "How dare you say that?" There's all these legal aid solicitors who are busily working hard for justice, but I think they all know they've all worked for places with unscrupulous bosses who double the amount of time they charge. Or I used to work for a firm. In the old days, if you got, it doesn't happen. I don't think it happens so much now. But if you got arrested, the police would let you out and you'd be what's called bail to return. Have you heard of that? And it means that you've got to come back. Sorry, it's pretty obvious. You've got to come back to the police station in a couple of weeks, and they'll let you know whether they're going to charge you or not. And so you'd need to, if they were going to charge you on that day, you'd need a solicitor at the police station with you. And the firm I work for, the police would often ring up the sort of day before the bail to return thing and say, "Oh, don't bother, we're not going to charge you. There's no need to come in." But they wouldn't tell the client that because then they wouldn't get paid for going to the police station. So the client would have a horrible experience of thinking they were going to be charged for longer than they might be charged for longer than they would. The taxpayer would have to pay for them all to go to the police station, and the solicitor would say, "Oh, I know, I never got notice." Whoever the police officer spoke to never wrote it down, which I think is absolutely terrible on a number of levels. But that's just one example. And the legal aid agency will, if you work for people, if you speak to people from the legal aid agency, I'm sure they would tell you stories that make that one seem mild. Um, and also, there's just all the unpleasantness as well, um, plus the sort of political pressure not to be seen to be nice to criminals, which actually isn't the solicitor's fault, but um, there we go. So I've got some comments. Anyone else want to say anything? Although, thank God that's finished. Apart from thank God that's finished. Um, so I'll take you into the comments bit because I have
I've
got.
just got a quick
Oh yeah,
question.
yeah, please.
I'm sorry if it's going off a little bit on a off topic.
No, that's fine.
But I feel like you mentioned lots of barriers there. But in your mind, in your experience, like what's the biggest barrier to people accessing legal aid or this prevention support and stuff? Because I feel like there's so many. What's the
That's a
biggest
really good question. All right.
one? Oh, and what's the most winnable one of like actually the legal aid agency could fix this or someone could do something about it?
So the biggest problem, I think, is apart from knowing about it, which because it's not really publicized. If you did, you'd think that if people were committed, if the government was committed to this scheme, there would be adverts on the side of buses and things saying, if you're at risk of losing your home, you know, call this number. There'd be a hotline, and they'd be monitoring whether these people on the provider list were actually doing what this. Because when you apply to be put on the provider list, you presumably it almost goes without saying that you're telling them, yeah, we can do this, we can provide the service. Otherwise, why bother applying? So they would, I think, knowing about it. And then the second one is getting through to somebody. It's very difficult engaging with solicitors' office. It's a bit like GPs, that you're dealing with people on front desks who are pretty battle hardened because they're facing demands all the time from people who are very stressed. So that may be difficult. Um, and just the old thing of capacity, because um, I suspect that the people that I spoke to who had a contract indicated that they were struggling to meet the demand, and I based. I mean, I know there are other organisations on that list who I've come across who refer people out because they can't deal with the stuff they got coming in. So I think that's the other thing. Now, what the legal aid agency could do, I think, is, I mean, I don't think it's naive of me or unreasonable of me to say that if you're going to set up a scheme, you need to help people to create their part of the scheme. So they should be providing funding, I think loans or investing, giving people advances on payment, and looking to how to sustain it and training them. They could pay people like me, instead of talking like this, they could send us into firms um, and say we'll get people, the people that they get to do peer reviews, who tend to be housing experts, they could get them to go in and help them, but they don't. So I think those are the biggest problems. And I think that the legal aid, I mean, I hope I don't sound like I'm saying the solution to all of it is just to throw money at the thing, but I think you can't do it without spending some money. And it would be nice if the legal aid agency did sort of come out of its shell a bit and say, well, we do want to sort of, we do believe in the things that we say we believe in, and we do when we promote them more. But you never see anybody from the legal aid agency on TV or something when they've got a discussion about people losing their homes. You'd think that the government agency charged with helping people to avoid that might be on there saying something about what could be done. And hey, we've got this scheme nationally where people can go get free assistance.
Well, do law centres and like legal aid places and stuff, do they record how many people they're turning away? Because I'm just thinking, like, like in terms of gatekeeping, it's really difficult to like quantify, because the whole point of them being gate kept is there's no record of it. And like, there's something in my head, like, are there seems to be lots of people who aren't aware of various things throughout the legal aid system, whether that's a client, whether that's the lawyers, whether it's the legal aid agency, or whether it's government. And actually, if they aren't aware of the fact that lawyers are turning clients away because of capacity, like, do places record that and then sort of can make a case to the legal aid agency and go, look, we're over capacity, can you train us, can you do this X, Y, and Z? Or is that
I think
silly?
they record what they do take on, but I don't think anybody records what they don't take on.
And I think it would be impossible to recall because, sorry, interrupt you,
No,
because
no, please, welcome to the
if you get a phone call and that
mic.
phone call's missed and that person just goes, okay, I didn't get that phone call, and goes on to somewhere else, or takes advice from a friend or social media. A lot of people now, it's quite common for people to put a social media post up. Or they'll go down a path, and so it's not possible to record everyone who doesn't get in contact or that's a missed. People go to court and they take the piece of paper and they'll have the leaflet, but they'll just phone around and be like, oh, because I don't think it's fully understand, because people say housing issue, eviction is quite a specific thing. So unless you know much about it, or that it's challengeable, so you're not going to know it's challengeable. If the landlord just tells you to leave, you'll just be like, oh, okay, but not know you can defend this isn't valid, this is illegal, that you can get an injunction, you can get legal aid. Most people just like, oh, more important to find out, you need to find somewhere else to live before this goes any further, especially if you've got children or elderly parents while you're working. Your main priority would just be like, right, I've got to go, I've got to find somewhere else to live. So you go through that. So it would be quite impossible to find out everybody who gets missed. That's quite a
Yeah.
long way of saying just missed a phone call. But
No,
we'll
you're right.
record
You're right.
everybody.
Because you think about it as well, it could be more of a cultural thing that we could encourage. Because you're right, if people get these letters saying you got to leave your home, a lot of people just panic and think, have a feeling of hopelessness, and they start packing their. I mean, how many times have you spoken to a client who says, "Oh yeah, I packed all my things up," and they'd only got to the notice of seeking possession stage, but it says on there you've got to leave on such and such a date. But there's
Some of
always,
those letters are quite intimidating. So if you don't,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, they are, and the court. I mean, the other problem is if you go to court and try and maybe even ask the court staff, there aren't. The reality now is there aren't any court staff because they cut all the court funding. So when you go into court, what used to be a court office that looked a bit like a building society where you could actually go and speak to a member of staff and say, I got this thing, what is it? And although they'd say we can't give you legal advice, they could tell you that you had to come back in 2 weeks or something. But you know, you think there's loads of TV shows about things like murder investigation or customs officials, but there aren't any about people sort of, you know, doing this sort of thing. And maybe it wouldn't be that great TV, but it would at least highlight that it was out there. So does that answer the question, Shannon? It's I think those are the big obstacles, and just I think just awareness generally of the service, and maybe encouraging people, say, here's a hotline. If you couldn't get through to anybody, ring this hotline and tell us about it, and we can record the people that didn't get through. So that I'll just see if I can get press the right button and get my comments up on screen, because there are some people that have taken the trouble to comment. I'll just try and get those up. Let me see that one. I think. Oh, where's, oh, yeah, it's this one. Sorry, there. And then I go to comments, and we've got this one here. So we've got. Can you see the comments there? It's not that clear. It's in white. So we've got Tiff. Hello, Tiff. Saying hello and thank you for letting us know of cancelling last. Yeah, I didn't actually, or did I? I think I did put a message on there, but yeah. So yeah, thank you for your patience. We've got best practice. Tiff, again, thank you for all you do. I'm grateful. If it's all right, Tiff, you've put quite a few. Oh no, you got. Is that a question? Homeless best practice. Is it not answering questions? No, well, it can be if anyone wants to. We've got a little bit of time left, so if you want to put a question on here, then do. And also remember, I'll try and put the link up showing that the things showing that it's coming up, so you can go on beforehand and leave a question. And I think may you please put the link information about to become homeless. You mentioned a couple of minutes ago in the chat. What does anyone remember me? Did I mention? Sorry. Oh, sorry.
It was
Homeless.
the link to
It's this one
the
here.
prevention thing.
Oh, so is it a request that I put that up? So am I being slow? Let's just see. May you please put the link to information about to become a homeless. Oh, yes, sorry, yes. Oh, well, it's up there already. Let me show you where it is. If we go back to this screen here, and you go to my blog, which there's a link to, if you look on this video on YouTube, I'm not sure, I probably can do it if I figure it, but I don't know, I'll probably crash the thing. But if you look at the information bit, there's some links, and one of them is to the show notes, which will take you to this. But if you just type wflack.com, it'll take you to the blog, and this is the most recent one. So the list of the stuff about the scheme is here. You scroll down, and then this provider guidance is not a particularly user-friendly looking document for the public, but it tells you what the schemes are. And shall we have a quick look at that 2-point thingy, just to see what it said. There was a regular 2-point. Yeah, so this is. I think this is the thing about being at risk of homelessness. So all housing matters set out. This is one of the ghastly things about guidance is there's always a reference to another paragraph, so you've got to jump over there. But all housing matters set out in paragraph 37 of the category definitions. I can take you to there in a minute. And additionally, the possession status. So sorry, let's just start again here. So it says help us. Early legal advice involves the provision of legal advice, legal help, in person or remotely. See, that's a nice thing now, remotely. Before coronavirus, that would never have been in there. To individuals at risk of possession proceedings, losing their home, or illegal eviction in relation to. So all matters set out in the category definition, paragraph 37, which I can go to sec. So it says possession status terms of occupation, repair, improvement, all the stuff that's all the stuff basically in terms of your own home and you're facing the loss of it. Rights of leaseholders, that's good because traditionally leaseholders would be very unlikely to be eligible for legal help because they would own a lease and that would be treated as capital. So once so if you've got a problem with a lease, and I suspect with a mortgage as well, actually, you would then be eligible for that. I may be wrong. So then you get all debt matters, says out of paragraph 27, all welfare benefit matters, and additionally, those extra ones, council tax reduction scheme. I never even heard of the Vaccine Damage Payments Act 1979. But if we go to so we want to go to, tell me if I'm going too far down this rabbit hole. Paragraph 37. So we want to click on there. Oh God, sorry. So let's go back. Maybe I have gone. So it was sorry, I probably went too far then. It's this page here. So it's saying category definitions, and we want to go to the standard civil contract 2024. So I've got to go to that one. And then we go to no, sorry, that's just a letter saying this is it. Here it is. So it must be further down. Must be, no, that one, 2024 standard terms. Then go to paragraph 30. No, that's all. It only goes to 30. So maybe the definitions, but let me just do a quick search. Definitions, category definitions. So if we go a bit further down, no, I'm sorry, I'll come back to that another time. I won't make you all wait while I dash about, but I think that would basically cover any problem in connection with possession proceedings and whether or not it would stretch to homelessness. I'll look into that and I'll come back to you. So here's some more points. Am I right? Tiff, thank you for all your comments. You put a lot on here. So I'm going to just, no. And we've got, here we go. It says, can you read? Actually, I'll just go back to comments. So it says, may you please put the link to information about how to, that's the one we just did. So we got that one. People can stay on legacy benefits. Please, sorry, I think that was a continuation from that. So also, please find out which people can stay on legacy benefits. I'm not sure of the answer to that one. Is that meaning that they can continue to claim employment support allowance rather than going on to universal credit? If you do mean that, I'm afraid I don't know. I assume that they're trying to stop everybody claiming. Is that what a legacy benefit is? Shannon, do you know that? Is that a legacy benefit is something pre?
Yeah, so it's the old style benefit. So anything it's like not universal credit essentially.
Yeah. And I don't know, there are rules that say when you can carry on receiving income support. Are there people out there still getting income support?
There are some people still on legacy benefits, yeah. But they're all being transitioned to universal credit and they'll have transitional protection. So they won't be worse off for a set amount of time
Good.
and they won't lose certain, because some of the other benefits are like passport benefits, so they allow you to get other benefits. So it's all like protected that way. But the key thing is to wait for the letter. Don't move over to UC preemptively because then you don't get the protection and stuff like that. So that's all I really know on that, to be honest.
My experience has been that universal credit, and I always used to find legacy benefits really annoying, and that you practically had to be a benefit specialist to sort of know what was going on. Whereas maybe you still do with universal credit, but there's a feeling now that it's made my life a lot easier, because as long as somebody's getting universal credit, they can usually get legal aid if they don't have more than £8,000 savings. Whereas before, there was only certain legacy benefits were passported. So do you remember there used to be an income-related employment allowance, and what was the other one? Work-related. There was two of them, and one of them wasn't passported, which was a nuisance, because the legal aid agency used to catch us out and say, "Oh, you treated them as passported when they weren't." So go back to this one. Oh, look, here's an interesting point. Citizens Advice signed a gagging clause in exchange for £21 million from the DWP. It seems the Citizens Advice Bureau are no longer impartial, doesn't it? Well, I would have thought that £21 million can have an effect on people's impartiality, but I don't know much about. Does anyone know much about?
I don't, but were Citizens Advice Bureau ever impartial? Like, I'm not trying to throw shade, but like, whoever you get your funding from sort of pulls the strings, right? So like, they're not impartial anyway, really. Or like, do you know what I mean? I don't know if they've ever come out and were like, we're impartial. I don't know. Yeah.
Well, I suppose, yeah. I mean, they always seem to be sort of on the side of the people against whoever it was that was giving him a hard time, and so I know, because there's been compromised things. Do you remember Bernardo's got into trouble? The children's charity got into trouble because they were running advice sort of booths within deportation, units where people have been detained. And so the question was, were they collaborating or not? But you do get that. I mean, we talk about that quite a lot in the context of advice centres which get funding from local authorities, and then somebody rings up from the housing department saying, "Why are your staff challenging our decisions?" But I guess it's a problem with funding. So we got another one. I know a vulnerable person with DWP Complex Team Referral Department received a letter stating that all benefits stopped and a notice seeking possession, and nobody is responding to letters. Received another hand-delivered letter a few days ago stating £1,600 rent arrears and to claim UC. V claimants asked UC agents to ask DWP if can stay on legacy benefits. No responses in writing. Yes, I guess there's not a lot I can say about that. It sounds quite harsh. Sorry, Tiff, if that's an inadequate answer. But Adam's got. Oh, sorry, Shannon, go on.
No, I just put it in the chat, but I believe the order is you can basically request a mandatory reconsideration. If that fails, you then go to like an independent tribunal. You can also raise like safeguarding alerts and referrals to like DWP basically have like a adult complex support service team. So you could raise a safeguarding alert there, and then obviously depending on how severe, how severe. Tell I haven't done the live stream for a while, guys. Depending on how severe the consequences would be, like life and death, like you could get an urgent judicial review. But like, yeah, so there are options to do potentially.
So thank you. And then Tiff's just added there that yes, legacy benefits is the ESA. Vulnerable person was on the support group of ESA. Disability element was given within that, and they took the disability element off the last payment. Yeah, I guess. Sorry, which was very strange. Then nothing, no payments. Well, I guess that there's elements of just traditional bureaucratic problems, isn't there, with the DWP? But I don't know. I haven't done any benefits advice myself. I used to do benefits work when legal aid covered it, but it looks like if I can become a provider under Holpus, then I could get back into doing that, which would be nice, because one of the problems at the moment for housing lawyers is if somebody comes to you and they've got a like something like we're talking about here, and it gives rise to rent arrears. You can't really do very much to challenge the benefits decision, because that's not, even if it's related, I mean, you can write to them and say what's going on, but you can't start sort of appealing benefits decisions. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's right. I'll just come back to Adam, who I passed there, who has a friend from Hackney and heard her main duty has been accepted. What happens then? Also, what happens if she starts working? Well, I think I can answer that unless somebody else wants to jump in. So should I just say, if a main duty being accepted, it's one of those sort of bits of jargon that probably Mike you would say is made more difficult by the 2017 Act, because there used to be just accepting a duty, and now you've got a relief duty and a main duty and a prevention duty. But the main duty basically means that they accept that you are somebody who would have previously been called sort of qualifying for help as a homeless person. You're eligible, unintentionally homeless, in priority need, and you have a local connection with that council. Have I missed anything? I think those are the hurdles you have to get across. But when you say what happens then, so what does the main duty involve? It doesn't. And in the old days, it did used to mean you'd get a council flat, but this is going back sort of 15 years. Which was great, and I don't know how they managed to continue giving them out for as long as they did, given that many of them had been sold off in the 80s and 90s. But what it means now is that the council retains a duty to secure that suitable accommodation is available for you, and they can discharge that duty by offering you, well, a number of different. They could offer you a council flat, they could offer you a referral to a housing association, but more commonly they'll offer you a private sector property, and they may even offer you the same property that you had when you were before you got owed a main duty if you were in temporary, and say we're now treating this as what's called 193 accommodation, and you could just be there for quite a long time. Unfortunately, it doesn't mean that much, other than that there will be the safety net for you, that the council will secure the suitable accommodations available. And if she starts working, the good news is that it won't affect her it won't affect the duty that the council owes her, if they still owe her a duty, because they can discharge the duty by offering suitable accommodation. But if you start working, the only implication would be that it may affect your entitlement to benefits. But other than that, I don't think it would have any impact on. Oh, well, I suppose it would have an impact on, where they could offer you. One of the nice things about working, in terms of getting offered accommodation, is that some councils in London, I don't want to scare people, but they do offer people properties way outside London, like sort of, 2 or 3 hours on the train. But one of the things that would affect suitability is that if you've got a job and you can't get to work, that's a reason to challenge the suitability of a property. But other than that, it doesn't have any connection. So
Would it not also affect what they have to potentially pay towards temporary accommodation, though?
It would affect, well, it might affect their benefits entitlement, yeah, and then they'd be responsible for the shortfall, yeah. But it's not like there's some people that there are people out there that think, and other people that might want you to think, that if you're working, then you're too rich to be housed as a homeless person, which isn't true. But on the other hand, if you're sort of chairman of ICI or something, you may have difficulty. But in theory, you could say I'm homeless and get offered something. So I think we've got another comment. We're coming up to past now, so I'll just start to wind up. I was wondering, thank you. I was wondering, but don't think was told by DWP, and don't think it's within the time now. Oh, that's about the asking for the legacy reassessment, yeah. So, and then there's another comment there. Heard nothing. Isn't it shocking? Getting hungry and I'm very desperate now, and rent needs to be paid. Yeah, I hope you can get. I mean, with I suppose if you're getting no payments, because the universal credit, you can you get advance? I mean, is it easier to get advances? Because in the old days, they used to be. Do you remember the social fund, or you could apply for a loan if you were get an advance on the benefits, but If they've suspended your benefits, I suppose by definition that's going to be a problem too. So that is everything for tonight. That's all the comments. So thank you for people who put comments on, and for all of you guys that are helping answer them. I don't think I've missed anybody, and I'm going to try and be back next Monday. I don't think I've got any other commitments. So just go back to here, away from the comments. So, oh, hang on, I've lost Mike on this screen. Unless just assign Mike. And then Mike is. Oh, I thought you were there. Something's gone wrong with
My
that.
computer crashed and I had to restart. So
Okay.
back onto Zoom.
Oh, sorry. Yes. If I add you, so you've been off the screen all this time, so now you're back. Anybody want to say anything else before we go? Okay. Oh, hang on. We've got one more comment, and it's from Tiff again. So I'll just go to that, and then we'll just go. It's this one here. I've got to admit, the vulnerable person has to listen to a previous video of what you said and write to some other department in housing to ask for DHP to cover. Oh, yeah, my DHP point again. Yeah, I mean, without wishing to drag this on longer than it needs to now that everyone's probably tired, but if you are facing the loss of your home because your benefits have been stuck and you've got rent arrears, my advice is ask for help as a homeless person and ask for the discretionary housing payment as part of that help you avoid losing your home. And oh, sorry, Adam's just asking, what was the second option? Social housing. Sorry, that's me using jargon. Social housing is what people in the profession say when they're referring to housing association and council properties. They both fall within that. But that's to distinguish it from private sector housing, which is not social. It's not antisocial, but it's not social in the sense that it's not meant to sort of be supportive and based on good intentions. It's just people renting out properties. And that's it. So, Adam, thank you for your insight. Thank you very much. You're welcome. And on that happy note, I'll say good night and hopefully see you all again next week and on Thursday. And don't forget to press the like button and subscribe. I'm pleased to say I'm up to 151 followers now, or subscribers. So I'm feeling less embarrassed about my numbers than before. But I tell you what, this is a weird thing. If you look on my channel, you'll see I went to the demo. I may have mentioned this before. I went to the kneecap demo outside Westminster Magistrates Court, and I made a little video where they came out and spoke. And I put it on the channel. It's had 1,000 views compared to it's had 10 times as many as any of these views. So it shows the power of people who are already media. So thanks again, everybody, and see you next week.